Welcome to The Power Within, the podcast where we explore leadership, personal growth, and the dynamics that shape success. I'm Keith Power, and each week I sit down with inspiring individuals who share insights on leading with impact, building resilience, and unlocking potential. Through their experiences, we'll uncover the mindset and strategies that drive meaningful growth. Whether you're looking to evolve as a leader or gain new perspectives, this podcast is here to guide you. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Steve Dawson, a voice and face that many across Asia will recognize from his years as a television presenter for ESPN, Star Sports, and Fox Sports Asia, as we explore more stories of resilience, growth, and the power of determination. Before anchoring global sporting events, Steve started out as a tax accountant in his native UK, then pivoted into journalism with Singapore Press Holdings before building a remarkable career in broadcasting. Over the years, he's interviewed legends, covered global events, and mastered the art of compelling storytelling. But today, Steve is channeling all those experiences into a new role, one of coach and mentor, through his work at coachsd.com, where he supports professionals in finding clarity, confidence, and presence. In this episode, we'll explore Steve's unique transitions from finance to front of camera to leadership coaching, and how he's stayed grounded, curious, and continually evolving along the way. Welcome to The Power Within, Steve.
Thank you, Keith. Very nice to be here.
Bit of a reversal of roles for you, right?
A little bit. I mean, I've been on this end of the table, as it were, a few times, and I enjoy it. You know why? Because the pressure's off me. You're going to ask me questions about me. I know quite a lot about me.
All right.
So all I need to do is just respond. I know the pressure's on you, so I'm just going to push all that pressure over there, and I'm going to have a really good time.
And I'll sit to your side now. So, your career has been anything but conventional, from tax accountant to journalist, broadcaster, and now leadership coach. What inspired these transitions, and how did you navigate such big career shifts?
Desperation inspired the first one because I wasn't a very good accountant. I was pretty good at some aspects of it. I mean, but they were all soft skills. You know, I could develop relationships with clients. I was a good writer, good communicator. But you need more than that to be an accountant. You need to be technically good. And I just I didn't have the drive, and I don't think I had the brain either to compete with some of the best, well, even some of the more moderate accountants out there. And I needed to change. I was quite stimulated by that career, and I was proud of it as well, because it was very much the sort of thing that I think my father would have wanted me to get into, and he witnessed that. Although I think he also witnessed and was probably aware of the fact that I was stumbling somewhat. I got my professional qualification, which was a great thing, but I didn't move up the hierarchy at the speed that I would have liked, and I think he could probably detect that. And everything that came afterwards was after my dad passed away. So that's a bit of a shame. But it was desperation initially. And then after that, it was just a question of seeing opportunities or being shown opportunities.
Okay.
And also the delight at actually finally being quite good at something that people were paying me money for. And I think that provides its own incentive, doesn't it, as well? If you think you're worthy of being there, and you're not an imposter, then that makes everything all the better, and encourages you to continue and develop, I think.
Having said that, imposter syndrome is present for a lot of us.
Yeah.
Perhaps that was the case in your accounting days. The fact that you passed your accountancy exams, that is under a severe pressure on its own, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So was it more the drive, the motivation of it, rather than you just being too humble about your technical abilities?
No, it's not me being humble. That's always something I've struggled a little bit with, although I've got quite good at that, I think. See, that's a contradiction, isn't it? No, I every academic achievement that I've managed has been hard work. it's not been through talent or ability. It's been because I really committed to it because there was no other choice, as I saw it in my, in that sort of young, narrow field of vision that you might have. And so it was a struggle. And so the delight so for example, when I joined ESPN and I was preparing to do Sports Center every day, there is a lot of research that needs to be done in order to be completely across the whole show so that you can then have the confidence to ad lib when you need to ad lib and write and voice creative reports in preparation for the show. Now, as a sports fan, all of that research was something that never, ever felt like work because the first thing I do when I wake up, Keith, and I know you're similar for you, pick up my phone and see what's happened overnight in the sports world.
For sure.
And then my enjoyment comes in getting deep into it by, reading reports and thinking about it and analysing it in my own head. That's fun. That's what I do as a hobby. You don't do that as a tax accountant. The first thing I did in the morning was not wake up and consider.
You didn't check the tariffs on the day.
I didn't. Well, gosh, we probably are at the moment as we speak. But no, I didn't pick up the tax legislation every morning and check whether my knowledge of a certain section was as thorough as it ought to be. That was hard work and difficult. So,
back to this talent versus hard work. The older I get, the more I hear from people, the hard work really does matter. And someone was sitting in that seat. Well, he wasn't. He was actually sitting at the end of a camera. A mutual friend of ours, Alex Young.
Yeah.
And Alex talked about talent is like a divider at the end for the ultimate. But up to that point, it is hard work. So I think if you have the motivation, that makes you want to work hard. And perhaps you didn't have the motivation to want to read all the new tax changes, etc. So the motivation lacked, perhaps. Yeah. I'm trying to be kind to you here,
No,
Steve.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's all hard work. It was hard work, but do you enjoy it? How do you view that work? Is it something that you enjoy doing, or is it a real grind such that you procrastinate and actually just get started only when your mind, body, and soul is fully available?
With the stars.
Exactly, yeah. and of course, that doesn't need to be the case for me picking up my phone and looking at the sports news overnight. That's something I want to do anyway. It's like a meal.
And still do.
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We have similar sports that we like, and there's some that we differ as well.
Yes.
Football, I never got. That.
Rugby, I never got.
Exactly. So you became a household name in Asia through your work at ESPN Star Sports and Fox Sports Asia when I first met you. I want to know three things.
Okay.
Firstly, what did live broadcasting teach you about confidence?
I mean, you have to be confident. If you're not, then everybody's watching, and we're quite skilled as human beings at detecting body language and then assessing what that body language means. And I think how you appear physically is very important. So I was very aware of that because I was a great consumer of my own content in the early days. I wanted to go and watch the replay. And you can pick up on things. And what I wanted to do, I mean, I think one of the goals I had, which I guess is pretty ego-driven, is to appear comfortable to my audience. And that's still something I have today. And when I pass this sort of advice on to clients in the coaching world, what I say is, when you're up on a stage and you're speaking, or when you are part of a panel, part of your role is to look comfortable.
Okay.
And focus only on what you're responsible for. Probably you're very good at what you're responsible for, otherwise you wouldn't be in this position where you're speaking to many people about it. So just relax, be calm, but you must show that you're calm as well. As an interviewer or as a host on a TV show, I had pundits, and there was a big range of comfort levels with the pundits that I had. Some would be, let's say, a football pundit on football shows that I did at Fox Sports 3 and 4 times a week. Some would come in and it was their first time ever and they were understandably very nervous. My responsibility when somebody steps into a rather intimidating television studio is to be comfortable so that they can feel comfortable.
Right.
If I'm a little bit panicky and a bit itchy and fidgety, then of course they'll feel the same way. And the more opportunity I have to chit chat to them, much as we did before the camera started to.
Yeah.
Well,
you put me at my ease. Thank you.
That's as did you, right? But that's part of the responsibility, right?
Yeah.
So that we can then have an authentic conversation that doesn't seem stilted, that doesn't seem something that would only happen because there's a camera there. You want to get the true feelings out of the person that you're talking to, whether it's on football or whether it's on career switches or whatever. And the best way to harness that, I think, is to have a relaxed interviewee. So that was a big part of my role. And of course, technical things happen, go wrong all the time. But that's not my area. If a graphic's not coming up, if it's not ready,
someone will fix it.
Someone will fix it. And if people are saying, Steve, you've got to fill for a minute, we haven't got that graphic you were expecting, immediately in my mind, okay, that's your problem, you deal with it. I'm going to talk to my mate here about football for the next minute.
I'd probably go,
well, and that's what a lot of people do. And that's when flustering and stuttering and general discomfort comes across to the viewer and then your
But
guest.
back to this point, it's live TV.
Yeah.
I have the privilege and benefit of this not going out for 4 or 6 weeks. And I can edit, etc.
I don't think it's a benefit.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Because it means you have to raise your standards and everything has to be almost perfect, right?
Yeah, I just swing it.
I know, and you do a great job as well. So you're lucky because you have that approach.
Right.
But I think live television, live broadcasting is much easier than recorded stuff because everything has a higher standard if it's recorded because everybody knows that you can take it away and splice it up and do retakes and what have you. And the standard of live broadcasting is lower. Ums and ahs and pauses are expected, and therefore you can relax a little bit more.
You saw me in action earlier. I did an intro to camera, and I just said, that's it. I treat it as if it's live.
Yeah.
I don't go back unless I really stumble. I don't go back over it. It is what it is.
As live is a pertinent phrase that we use in broadcasting. So we're recording, but treat it as live. In other words, if you mess up, just keep going. And that helps people a lot.
So I said there'd be 3 points. The second point of that is with your live broadcasting and your exposure to that. What did you learn then about communication?
I mean, a lot. You know, this could be a long answer, and many of my answers will be long, sadly, Keith. Sorry.
No, that's good.
Communication is something that has never been a big problem for me. I mean, I talk. I'm quite happy to talk. In fact, I quite relish the idea of speaking, and I think speaking with more than just your voice is something that comes across.
Okay.
I started in television in hard news, and really you ought not to communicate with much more than your voice in hard news, because what you do when you use your hands and your eyes and your face is you give the viewer an idea of what you're thinking and how carefully or how much you care about something. And if I talk to you about the news of the day, as a newscaster, all I ought to be doing is passing on that information to you so that you can make up your own mind. Now, sport is different. It's entertainment. Nobody's dying in sport.
Oh, cool.
It's fun. So if I want to have a little bit of fun and talk about how badly my team, Liverpool, played the other night, I can have a little twinkle in my eye if I want to. Doesn't really matter. In fact, hopefully, to some degree, it's entertaining.
Yeah.
All of that is done with hands and face and smiling. Smiling. If you're presenting in the business world, what you're trying to do is get people to jump on board with your idea, your philosophy. So to be approachable is key. And so smiling is the very easiest route to that. So I think communication, if I can pick one thing, is about more than just what you're saying, is how you're saying it.
Yeah, just literally how you walk into a room, how you present yourself. We had a discussion earlier about how we dressed and things like that. And
quite different today.
Yeah, I started off in a plain white T-shirt, and I thought that would become my trademark. And I've gravitated back towards where I spent most of my life.
You've gone nicely up the hill, and your guests have gone down the hill. Okay, sorry about that.
So what did the experience, because I find you fascinating live broadcasting, and I've seen you at close quarters. I was lucky enough to be invited to the studio, and I sat in awe. But what did they teach you about handling pressure?
I mean, I think that goes back to what I said before. I think you can't deal with pressure in anything like a panicky way because it affects everybody around you. Yeah. I mean, on a TV show, you are very much it shouldn't really be said, but the truth is you're very much the central figure.
Yeah.
you're the brand, I suppose, in some way.
Well, the name gives it away. You're the anchor.
Well, yes, exactly. That's
You're the
good.
anchor to it. So if
well
you
expressed,
are drifting as an anchor, then the whole ship and all the passengers and crew are drifted too. So
I think what I learnt is something I've touched upon already. Just look after your own stuff. So if and many technical things go wrong in a television studio, and I get informed about it in my ear, but I just, in my mind, okay, we'll sort it out. It's your problem, not mine. I'll sort out my problems. Like if I can't remember what the next question is, or my interviewee is a bit monosyllabic and not really giving me the insight or entertainment that we want, I'll deal with that in the moment. There's ways for me to try and figure out how to maneuver my way around that. Everything else is your problem. And so that pressure, I deflect.
how did you learn that? It's not a natural
again,
thing.
panic,
Yeah.
desperation. Yeah. No, you can't afford to worry about other people's problems because that it comes across in your face and in your
But that's
mannerisms.
hard. You make light of it, but I think that's very difficult in that live environment where there's so many moving parts, so many people responsible, but to be able to be focused enough to just say, yeah, this is my bit, they'll sort that bit. That's a learned skill. It's not an innate skill, I'd imagine.
It doesn't surprise me that you're saying that because you've been a corporate leader.
Right.
And as a corporate leader, you can't exist in a silo. You have to be a part of all of the people that you're leading. So you have to have tremendous empathy. And you have to be able to relate to everybody's problems, and you have to get your fingers in those problems. And the balance of how you do that, is something I'd love to hear from you about. But it's something you need to be involved in. And I think a television presenter, certainly the way I approached it, it's a different thing. It's a different skill set, different requirements.
That's why you did what you did and I did what I did.
Probably, yeah.
But I did learn over time not to put my fingers in. Less and less and less.
Less is more. Right?
Over time.
Yeah.
And it was more about hiring the right people, giving them the right motivation, and then trusting them.
Yeah.
So your level of trust is absolute in your team around you to do that, right?
That's a good question. I'm not sure that I always had tremendous people around me. I mean, so I've worked with tremendous people.
I hope you're not watching.
Well, no. I mean, I've worked with many people in many parts of the world.
Of course.
So, I don't think anyone can really say, oh, that was me or that wasn't me. But there is quite a scope between, great support and not great support in the environments that I've worked in the television world. Just the other week, I worked with Formula One crew to do my spot in Porsche Carrera Cup. And the people I have week to week are very good. But these people, because it was a special event, because it was a Formula One race as well, were so good.
Right.
Everything. And they emanated calm
Yeah.
and professionalism. And therefore everybody around them was calm and professional. And the whole thing was super smooth. And you think to yourself, gosh, if I worked with those people week in, week out, how much better I would be. Because there's then a certain... the responsibility or the areas for which I'm responsible fall away. I can focus more and more just on what I am supposed to do.
I'll be careful here, but I was quite close to the McLaren team, and I saw at close quarters, in my opinion, the most professional team that there was under Ron Dennis.
Yeah.
And that's why the drivers were able to just do their stuff.
Yes.
'Cause everyone was so smooth around them.
Yeah.
And other teams who will remain nameless looked like the proverbial headless chickens, and the results showed accordingly.
And that was always time pressure as well, wasn't it? Whether it's
course.
overnight fixing the car or a pit stop that's just a matter of seconds, everybody's got to be super on it, otherwise you pay the penalty in time.
Amazing being close to that. And I have some concerns now with Lewis Hamilton in Ferrari because they're not of the same mindset. They're very different mindset people. The Ferrari team.
Fascinating, yeah.
They are emotional.
Are they all Italian?
I think the majority are Italian.
Yeah.
He's taken his own couple with him, of course. They always do. But it'll be a very different environment. And so he's gone
culture,
from a super organised team
Yeah.
to another super organised team with Mercedes and Ferrari, which is Ferrari. That's why they're brilliant.
Yeah.
We won't go there. You know a lot more about F1 than I do. So let's...
I'm not sure, actually, about that.
I don't know. I got close enough, but that doesn't mean necessarily I got to know it. I got known by Nico Rosberg as the bastard. I'll tell you that another time.
That's how you're known to all of us. Though.
Yeah, that's true. The bastard, okay. Now, from anchoring Premier League to interviewing global sporting icons, what are some of the standout moments for you that have shaped you both professionally and or personally then?
Well, I've told this story before, but I think it's the one that really answers your question. I think when you interview, the Lewis Hamiltons of this world, as a sports fan, what you really want is to develop some kind of a relationship with this person. You want them to recognize you and say, "Oh, hi, Steve," that kind of thing. If you act as a fanboy,
right,
that's never going to happen because those people are surrounded by people like that all the time. So you're never going to stand out. So my philosophy is not to be that. In fact, to be everything but that, and just be professional. And the example that I give, and there actually are numerous examples, but the best example I think is when I interviewed Manny Pacquiao once in Singapore, and of course I wanted to be Manny Pacquiao's mate. I wanted him to recognise me and for us to have an ongoing journalism superstar relationship. And of course I wanted a photo with him, but you can't do that. So I came into Marina Bay Sands into his suite, and Manny was having his breakfast by the door. It was a big room, and his manager took me to the other end of the suite and sat me down. He said, "Steve, we love Formula One." Obviously, they watched Formula One, being in the Philippines, so the show went there. And I said, "Oh, that's great, lovely." I said, "Yeah, we all love it. And how's Alex?" And et cetera, et cetera. And then Manny came along, and we mic'd him up, and we did the interview. But before we did the interview, his manager said, "Manny, it's Steve Dawson." And he looked at me, and then the manager said, "Formula One." And Manny went, "Oh," so there was that recognition there, which was a big thrill, right?
Awesome.
So we did the interview, and I said, "Oh, thanks everybody," shook hands, we de-mic'd, and I was walking out the door. And as I was going out the door, Manny Pacquiao said, "Steve," and I said, "Yes," and he said, "Can we have a photo, please?"
No way.
So that is, I think, the best real-life example of the rewards that come if you act as a professional. Right. And you don't become a fanboy. So this is how I like to deal with superstars if I get the opportunity.
But
to
you were the
them.
superstar that day.
No, but clearly there were rewards that came my way because I acted professionally.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's about the things you turn down rather than the things you accept, even if you want to do them. I've turned down lunch with Michael Schumacher and drinks with Carlo Ancelotti and things like that because I have work to do.
Yeah.
But I didn't go out of my way to say, "Look, I'll meet you at midnight when I'm done," or something like that, which would have been a bit desperate. And there's other stories I have. I know we don't have forever, but this it comes back to reward you if you can be professional at every stage.
Not just professional, but respectful.
Yes.
It really matters. Respect matters, and people remember that for sure. But no, that's a great story. So many people dream of doing what you've done. I could only dream of that, that's the truth. But shifting into their passion, as you said, from tax accountancy, it doesn't sound like it was too hard a shift, or coaching, but fear holds them back. What helped you trust yourself during times of uncertainty, times of change?
I think the biggest change was certainly from accountancy to journalism.
Right.
But you and I are big boxing fans, and so that I had a love and a knowledge about boxing that helped me in my journalism and gave me a good base. That
you were a writer.
I was a writer in the UK
when you were a tax accountant.
So
right?
it was a freelance thing.
Yeah.
And so the move into journalism was, I wouldn't say seamless, but it wasn't as drastic a move as it might appear.
It was like the passing of a baton. You already had your hand on the baton.
But the difficulty, Keith, was actually giving something up and fully leaving behind something that I'd invested 11 years in. And really, the first 6 years were full time because it was study and work.
Of course.
So my wife and I, Diana, living in one of the greatest cities in the world, in London, for 6 years, and really all we did was work and study, and we missed out on finally we had a salary and we could do things in London, but we did very little because all of our time was devoted to getting the qualifications that we eventually got. My wife had a far easier time of it than I did, but that was a real struggle. And giving up that, to effectively say, and it wasn't a waste of time. It definitely was not. To this day, it helps me out in life.
Do you do your own tax returns now?
I do. Actually, I have several to do, but I farm it off to other people. But I understand it. But it's not tax technical stuff. It's the other skills that come with it that have put me in a good position in different environments. I think, and so that is very, very key. But leaving that behind was, I think, quite a brave thing to do, but it had to be done because I clearly was not going to develop into anything like a success in the accountancy world. Everything else that came afterwards, so the shift from print journalism to broadcast journalism to coaching, was very organic. It was a step that was natural and that you could in some ways have predicted, I suppose, even to coaching, because I was always the person that my bosses would tell rookie presenters to come and sit next to. So they shadowed me and I passed on advice. And there are presenters dotted around the region now that had their first taste of the business sitting behind me and looking over my shoulder. And it was something I really enjoyed. And so to do more of that and have my own company doing that really wasn't a huge sideways step. It was actually a sort of a gradual step forward.
We've been friends for a long time. I've been a big admirer of yours as well.
Thank you.
So when you did make that transition, I must have been one of the first leaders to bring you in.
You were.
With my team.
I'm very grateful as well, by the way.
But what I knew, first of all, I knew you were good. I knew it would be good for my team, okay? That's the number one. It has to be the number one leader. But number two, I knew that you would need to have some credibility, some reference customers, etc. So that was a win-win.
Yeah.
And watching you in action, and I did kind of sit back, although I was in the meeting, and watching the reactions of people. It's one of the best reactions I've seen in my group with any kind of training. So I learned from that.
That's very kind, thank you.
And I've taken that on. And I was with one of the people who were in that meeting day before yesterday in Delhi, Sanjeev, who remembered you only too well. And when I said I was seeing you, he said to say hi. He told me you make a big impact on him and how he presents himself.
Yeah.
That's 6-7 years on.
Yes. About
Something
that.
like that. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to give you that feedback.
It was very kind of you. You were very trusting because even though you, as you say, you'd been exposed to aspects of me, what you hadn't been exposed to was whether I could pass things on.
Exactly.
And the effect I would have on a group that was in front of me. And that was really just trust. And I'm grateful for that.
Important.
Yeah.
Respect and trust.
Yeah.
Really
you
important
need to develop
things.
those relationships in the business world, I suppose, and take a leap of faith.
For sure.
Maybe sometimes.
And I like to do the unusual sometimes anyway.
That was certainly unusual.
So I've given you a nice, easy ride so far. Today, your focus is, as we just said, coaching leaders, presenters and professionals. What do you see as the biggest blind spots that people have who you train when it comes to their personal presence and communication?
So there's a lot actually, and there's a wide scope. There's some people that struggle here, and there are other people that struggle at the other end of the spectrum. In general communication, rather than just standing before an audience, I think general communication, the biggest problem that people have is a sort of an inbuilt assumption that the person you're talking to knows either everything or a great deal of what you know. And we need to set the scene for people. So jargon is an issue, but it's more than just words that people outside of your field don't understand. You need to set the scene more and be more cognizant of the fact that if you're speaking to someone and explaining something to them, it's because they don't know the things you know.
Yeah.
So setting a scene out, taking a few more steps back than you probably would otherwise want to, is so important. And I've been speaking recently to somebody, setting up some marketing for my business in a certain environment. I won't give too much away, but it's been a painful series of steps for me to give them what they want in order to achieve what we both want to achieve.
Okay.
And from my perspective, it's been about them assuming too much knowledge on my part.
Right.
And I was talking to my daughter about this. My daughter's very good at taking a step back and analysing the situation. And she picked out some things that I could have done better. And she was absolutely spot on.
Okay.
And between us, we agreed that there were certain things that the other party should have done as well. For us to come together into the same room, effectively, metaphorically, only then can we communicate properly. If we're in different rooms, metaphorical rooms, because we have not met each other in the right place in terms of what do we understand, what do we know about this area. Unless we know that, we can't properly communicate. And people are reluctant to say, oh, hold on, I don't understand that.
I'm the dumbass that does that, and I don't mind appearing dumb because I become smarter.
Yes, exactly.
Each time.
And too many people are willing to fake it and not be honest about their ignorance.
I remember I was in Poland, my first board meeting, and they were talking away, and they were talking about FOB. And FOB, freight on board.
Okay.
Don't
know what that is.
And I didn't know.
Yeah.
So I just heard them talking. I said, what's FOB? So our lawyer, he said, you don't know what FOB is?
Yeah.
I said, oh, tell me. And he went, Eric. He moved to the side. They'd been talking around this.
And no one knew what it was.
The supply chain guy was talking about it.
Yeah.
Everyone was using this acronym, and nobody knew what it was, barring my boss. Yeah. So I helped educate everybody. Yeah. And you saw literally the shutters drop away. Yeah. And I continued to be the dumb person, but I would do that to save their face. That's how they saw it. Yeah. But seriously, I do see that. And if you come to Singapore, we've both been here a long time. They're acronym crazy here.
Yes, it's just like...
When I first heard...
Acronym Island.
The news in the morning and the traffic, I had no clue what they're talking about. Absolutely no clue, because everything is shortened. Marina Bay Sands was MBS before the announcement went out about Marina Bay Sands.
AYE.
But the point is, Singaporeans get it.
Yeah, of course.
But they need to understand in the communication world, others don't. Yeah. When they come in, I think you should say, by the way, we love acronyms here. Here's a few of the key ones. That's a great introduction to your guests and visitors to Singapore, instead of them like, what on earth is everybody talking about, right?
Yeah. And it's acronyms, it's initialisms, there's a number of other things, but you can take it to other elements as well. Your visuals in a business presentation, your slides, are often constructed on this assumption, this wrong assumption that your audience knows a great deal about the subject. Right. Well, the reason they're there is because they don't
learn something.
So every slide you put up there, if it's in any way complex, you have to take a moment to say, well, on this slide, what I'm showing you here is set the scene, and then give us the point you want to make. Because otherwise, people are just looking at this slide going, what's going on? Because they've never seen this slide before. You've worked on it potentially for hours, but this is the first time they've seen it. They can't absorb the whole idea of it within a few seconds in time for you to then explain what the impact of this slide is. And that's a big issue. So generally speaking, that empathy that your audience doesn't know what you know and correcting for that is probably, if I had to pick one thing, probably the biggest hurdle that people fail to overcome.
One thing I'd add into that at the beginning of a presentation so that everyone feels comfortable to say, you probably know this, but... And then I'll explain.
Yeah.
Because sometimes if you just explain, they go, oh, do they think I'm dumb? Because the different levels of understanding in the audience. I noticed, just going over old files from 15 years ago, my presentations were very text heavy. Now they're more visual and one-liners. I've learned, and the most powerful key that I've got on the PowerPoint is B or W on the keyboard, because it blacks the screen or whites the screen. To stop people looking at the slides, to listen.
Very nice,
And if it's there, there's always someone looking at it and reading it, etc.
And it gives people the excuse to stop making eye contact, which is something sometimes a bit awkward.
Good point.
They'd rather look at the screen, and then they're not listening to you.
But when you press B, and for those in you who don't know that, choice. When you're in presentation mode, if you press B,
I did do this.
It goes to black. If you press W, it goes to white.
I will use this.
Press it again and it comes back. And that's a great way of just pulling, look at me now.
You learn something new.
Drawing from both your media and coaching experiences, I'm not going to ask you about tax here. What's your approach to helping someone find their voice, whether in the boardroom or on camera?
is multifaceted, and it depends on, because I like to have what I call a baseline. I like to see people present first, and then I can more likely discover what it is that is the main challenge, and then only can we really work on developing things. And you might say that I'm evading your question, but the truth is that the idea that you can just provide a cookie cutter solution to people is never really going to hold any water. I think you need to be able to analyze each individual and then assess, as part of a discussion, maybe with them, maybe with their bosses and their mentors, which areas would you like to improve upon? And if I have some experience in this area, which I think I do, which areas do I think you can improve upon?
Yeah, of course.
And then there are different solutions and there are different ways to tackle it. It all depends on what the problem is, you know? So sorry for sidestepping, but it's to make it cookie cutter, to make it general would be...
Having worked in my last 5 years in corporate life for an American corporation, there is a little bit of a mentality in American corporate life when it comes to Asia, the cookie cutter approach of work, that they can bring something that worked in Kansas and drop it into Shenzhen.
Oh, gosh.
And I've learned...
Well, we know that, don't we?
We know, but others think differently. You've spent your career, let's exclude the first few years, the first 11 years, in high-performance environments.
It was a high-performance environment. It's just that I wasn't one of the high performers, that's all.
What habits or routines have you used to help you stay grounded on track?
Good preparation is something I learned pretty quickly in broadcasting. I mean, I've been surrounded by a few good people, and I think this specific question that you ask, I'll mention Jason Dacey, who was the first co-anchor that I had on SportsCenter at ESPN.
Oh, okay.
And I sat next to Jason, you know, we would in the hours leading up to the show, and I had the privilege of watching how he prepared, and there was a number of habits that he picked out that stood out to me that I mimicked and copied. You know, I mean, one thing, for example, an anchor, and this goes back also to Arnold Gay at Channel I. An anchor will sit there in a fairly quiet newsroom, which is in many ways just like any other open plan area of a company. And when he's looking at his links to camera, he would read them out aloud. So you and I would read emails in our head, but he must read it aloud. And at first I thought that's a bit weird and a bit, you know, he's not very self-conscious, is he? Because everyone can listen to him and he's disturbing everyone else. But of course, this is a spoken medium. It's not just about how it appears in your head. You've got to hear yourself say it.
Yes.
And he'd been doing it for many years, and so it wasn't even something he thought about. And I developed that habit, and probably people thought the same thing about me that I thought about Arnold in the first few days. But eventually you realize it has to be done, because writing for the spoken word is actually quite challenging. And all of our links to camera are written initially by somebody else. And writing for the spoken word is difficult. Writing for somebody else to speak is even more difficult because we all speak differently. We all have different cadence. We all have different styles. And every link I ever received would be rewritten in some way. But there was a framework for me to work with. And in order to make sure that it was going to come out well on camera when we go live, there's no other chances, as you said, after that, I need to speak it in the newsroom, in the open plan working area. I mean, you know, that's one.
It's almost a dry run for life.
It is exactly
just getting you into that
it's a
frame of mind. Really important. Mentors are like a formal help to you, but sitting alongside, as you literally did, someone who you could see were professional and you could mimic those habits is so fantastic to be able to build your own.
And I was lucky. I had good people around me. A number of good people.
Sitting watching you now. Now you have a whole plethora of people listening, watching, learning, seeing your habits, including me. And one thing, he also was the MC at my wedding.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
which was 11 and a half years ago. Believe it or not,
at the British Club. Right?
That's flown by. One other bit of that then. How do you always are? How do you stay so energized in your work?
Coffee, probably. No, I think it's because I'm very lucky that I enjoy my work. So
Right.
the subject matter usually is very enjoyable, and there are some sports that I have to, grown a bit at. I'm a big
Right.
sports fan, but that doesn't mean I enjoy every sport. And actually,
Yeah.
Formula One was a great example of a sport that I had no interest in until I had to. And then you get behind the helmet and you see the people and their stories, and then it becomes interesting. So that's certainly one thing. It's about being naturally interested anyway. I think that's how you get up for something,
Right.
But also the high cost of failure, drives you on. If you're broadcasting to millions of people potentially, then you want to make sure that it's going to work well. But even if you're in a room with 8 or 10 people, they are looking to you and expecting to learn something or expecting to get something out of the day.
Yeah.
And if you don't deliver, that's quite an embarrassment. It's quite a fall from grace. So the cost of failure probably is something that
Keeps you going.
motivates you to prepare well.
You're younger than me. Let's just leave it there.
Marginally.
You're younger than me. You're the right side of 60. I'm the wrong side of 60. How do you continue to focus on your own personal growth and your evolution as both a person and as a professional?
It's interesting that you mention age, because I think we do have different phases of life, don't we? And for me, I'm tremendously lucky at the moment, in a number of ways. Our children are both working individuals now, and although they still end up costing you quite a lot of money, as I think you know,
No.
by and large, they're off our hands financially. My wife has had an exceptionally successful career. I've always been very proud of her and in awe of what she's achieved. And so she keeps the bank account ticking along quite nicely. So there's not tremendous pressure because our costs have gone down and there's still income there. There's not tremendous pressure on me to work every hour that God gives. And so I'm in a position now where I'm in my late 50s. I'm having a sort of a transitional period between full-on work, which was the case at Fox Sports. It was 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, and extra work that I was doing with other organizations, to now a situation where perhaps on average I work 1 or 2 hours a day. On average, there are days when I work a full 10 hours, and there are days that go by when I don't work at all. I'm lucky enough, therefore, to be able to design my life in a way that suits me. So I get lots of work overseas, but I hate the idea of just going to Shanghai, working and coming back. I'd much rather go to Shanghai, work, head off to Koh Samui as I did the other day, enjoy a few days by the beach, and then come home, or maybe link one overseas job with another and then spend the days in between, I don't know, in Ho Chi Minh or something like that.
I get that. I've been, I don't know how many times, more than 20, less than 30 times to Delhi. But in the corporate life, I just went there, met, organized dinners, meetings in offices, factories, and home.
Yeah.
This time I went, but it's my time. So I built in a day and I sight saw.
Finally
for
got
the
to
very
see the city.
first time.
Crazy, right?
A bit crazy. It was 41 degrees. And I looked quite red-faced in the pictures I took. Bonnie, my wife, thought it was suntan, but it's not. It was just the exertion of walking in 41 degrees. But it was fabulous.
And too many beers, probably.
And no, I didn't.
Oh,
no,
really?
Later on, I had a G&T to cool down
lovely.
after
Perfect.
everything, which was really nice. Yeah. But I get your point that you can make your own time. And yet, when we met up just over a year ago, and we have our regular high tea.
And we should do that again sometime.
But you were busier than I was. You made me feel a little guilty that I'd been slacking, to be honest.
Well, don't. Yeah.
So I've stepped up. So it looks like we're passing each other again now.
Yeah, but I think this idea of, we have to fill our day.
For sure.
But I think a lot of people struggle. I think a lot of people struggle in that steep fall off between working full time and then retirement.
I did.
And that's why I think I'm lucky in that I've had a transition. Everything I do, I think, is becoming a rehearsal for retirement. At some point, I'm not going to have any work.
Yeah.
I'm already probably too ugly to be on camera a great deal, which is why I get more commentary gigs and presentation gigs these days. I think at some point, the work I'm doing now is everything ends, right? I don't know when it's going to be.
Look at Attenborough.
But then you get to the point where if I've got a quantifiable number of years left, do I want to spend it doing anything other than just
enjoy
something that's pleasurable or something that really helps other people?
The crappy thing is we don't know how long that is. We had that discussion earlier. Both our dads died quite young, right?
Yeah.
So I'm mindful of that and I'm approaching in a few years the time when my dad died, and you're at that point. It really makes you rethink everything, right?
But it's a helpful perspective to have, isn't it?
Sure.
Not a good thing to have been through, but it gives us a greater sense of urgency to make sure that what we do here is valid and worthwhile and enjoyable.
Well, I'm don't have as much free time as you because I've got 7-year-old and 10-year-old kids.
Yeah.
I'm the crazy one that did that all over again. Let's go back. I've touched a number of times, unfairly perhaps, on your tax accounting days, but if you could go back to the tax accountant, Steve, that version of yourself, what would you say to yourself, knowing what you know now?
So I think about these things a lot, probably because I've got too much time on my hands. You know, would I have taken a different path? And I had this conversation with my wife actually only on 3 days ago. We were having dinner and we were talking about what other paths we might have taken, perhaps had we not come to Singapore or whatever. What would I say to myself? I don't think, that apart from the odd little error here and there, I don't think I've done too many things that I regret. Certainly not in terms of life paths.
Okay.
I think if the biggest influence on my life undoubtedly has been Diana, my wife, because that's why I'm in Singapore.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Initially, when we had this conversation, if we hadn't come to Singapore, what would we have done?
Explored London for a start.
Well, yes, that. we think the first thing we said was, well, we probably have ended up in America, where we spend a lot of time anyway. Yeah. But then we realised, well, it's a stupid question because as being together as a unit, we would inevitably have come to Singapore. It would be strange if we hadn't, given our personalities, who we are and what we do. So really, if I was to go on these sliding doors moments, the biggest sliding door for me would have been not to have got together with Diana.
Right.
So if I was alone in London or met somebody else, what would I have done? And what would I say to myself if I went back now? And I think what I would say to myself was, find Diana.
Yeah.
Actually. Because Asia, as you know, and the fact that we're both still here is testament to the...
Well, I went away and came back, as you know.
But you came back.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a bigger thing
like
in many ways. It's a bigger thing than staying here all the time. Going away and then deciding, I want to come back. Right?
And I know both of us are fortunate enough to be able to stay here beyond a 3-5 year work assignment, which lots of people do, right?
Yeah.
And they dream of wanting to stay. We're living the dream in that respect.
Absolutely, we are.
It's fabulous. Every day I can just put on a pair of shorts, a T-shirt and flip-flops. And you imagine doing that. Even in July, it might be too cold in the UK.
No. Do you enjoy having this conversation with your peers, people that are like us, that have come from other countries, settled in Singapore, and asking them, what's the end game? Are you going to go back? Are you going to stay? Or are you going to sort of go somewhere else in the region? Because depending on what brought you here, what you've done since you came here, those answers are all different.
Very different. And most people are smart enough to know they can't think beyond 5 years anyway. I learned that a long time ago.
Very true, yes.
But
yes, it's very true.
Things are kind of working its way out for us. Bonnie, who's Malaysian Chinese, became a Singaporean citizen last year.
Yeah.
And the kids became Singaporean citizens 2 months ago. So I guess I'm kind of stuck here for the foreseeable. So let's wrap up with aspiring leaders, communicators, and anyone looking to reinvent themselves, as you've done a couple of times. What's one piece of advice you'd share to help them unlock the power within?
I think for me, what unlocked my power within was doing something that I was good at, which is not easy to find always, But suddenly doors opened. I went from a job that I thought I should do that my father would have enjoyed, that was stimulating
And paid well.
and paid fairly well, but also was, I didn't really have a big scope. It's not like I analysed the entire employment field. I just kind of stumbled into it blindly, actually. And in the end, it wasn't really a happy place. I found the happiness, the power within then came about because I ended up doing something that I enjoyed and am naturally incentivized to perform in. So I think there's a generational change. For me, and I think my brother and our generation, it's a thing you said. We want money. We want our parents to be proud of us, and we want to do the thing that we've kind of been indirectly, subconsciously led into.
And we do. You said accidental. I don't believe that. I think that you come to these sliding door moments, as you call them, but you still have to step through. You have to make a decision.
Yes.
And I think the people who don't are the ones who then, maybe they live with regret, maybe they don't, but they don't move forward. So it's not accidental. You put yourself in a position, you're there, you see the options, and you make a decision. Go, stop, left, right, whatever. So I'm kind of answering the question for you now in saying you made that. It didn't happen as accidentally as you suggest.
But it's a generational thing. I mean, I think you and we didn't come from poverty-stricken homes, but we were.
I did.
Well, okay, but money wasn't there for us to just fritter away.
Of course.
And I'm not saying it is now for our children, but they're comfortable, our children.
Yeah.
And so they're less motivated by the parameters that I've just set out for my career choice.
Yeah.
And now, so in this generation, not everybody by any means, but certainly, let's say in our realm, the kids that we're having are much more able to step into careers that would likely be something that they love. My daughter is a veterinary nurse.
Yeah, you're saying it's
She's
great.
always been, since she was very young, a lover of animals, more than people. And this is just ideal for her.
Smart girl.
She is a smart girl. She's a very smart girl. And my older daughter has jumped around from one or two things, finding her way. But overwhelmingly, this is Amelia, my older daughter, she's a helpful person. She cares about other people. And she's just done a master's in speech therapy. And now she's working with children and older people who may have had some medical issue and are struggling to gain the speech ability that they had before. And she's so suited to that. So both girls, Hayley and Amelia, are doing things that they are naturally drawn towards, that they really enjoy, and they're not motivated by the things that we were motivated by. And the fact that we've been able to put them in that position is something I think we can probably be quite happy about.
I'm proud.
Yes. Who's to know whether the next generation, whether it goes like that though,
who knows?
from one generation to another? I don't know. That will remain to be seen. But
we could talk all day, Steve.
And perhaps
easily.
will.
We do sometimes. And I do think we're long overdue one of our high teas.
Let's do it.
But I'm no longer a member of the British Club.
I'll host you at the cricket club next time then.
Okay, and Serangoon Garden Country Club is not on the same level as the
No,
British Club.
They don't have the stacked high teas.
No,
Oh,
so we have to find somewhere else.
Okay.
So thanks for sparing your time. Thank you for sharing your journey, your story, your own power within. And it has been quite a journey. And it's so good to be at the point you are and very happy with where you've got. I hope that all our listeners and viewers are able to do the same thing. You talk about appearing in front of millions, which you did. I've got 12,500 subscribers now, and that scares me to death.
It's only going to get bigger.
Yeah, I thought with my friends and family I'd get a few hundred and they'd be critical, etc. But now I'm getting critiques from India, from Australia, because people do write. They tell you stuff, right? Hey, you should try this, or maybe you should do that. But they keep watching, so that's great. Thanks again, Steve.
Very welcome.
And thank you for joining us on The Power Within. Thanks for listening to The Power Within. I hope today's episode inspired you to grow, lead, and create the success you deserve. If you enjoyed the podcast, share it with someone who might find it valuable. And don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Join us next time as we explore more stories of leadership and personal growth. And remember that setbacks are just stepping stones to something greater. Until then, stay strong, stay positive, and keep believing in the power within.